Welcome to Heavy Networking. This episode is one of those we're living in the future episodes where we're going to talk about how to perform root cause analysis of a performance issue. And you're going, Banks, we've had that for a long time in the networking space, right? Yeah, we have, right? Varying levels of success. But I'm not talking about root cause analysis just for the networking part of the stack. I am talking about root cause analysis for the full stack, the whole thing. It's not good enough to be a network engineer going, it's not the network, because that's great. You can say it's not the network. That's fine as far as it goes. That doesn't solve the problem. The business isn't helped by knowing what the problem isn't. The business is helped by knowing what the problem is. Sponsor Selector is here to talk about exactly how they are providing this sort of comprehensive root cause analysis. Now, you're going to listen to us work through the architecture and some details of how Selector builds IT and network management platforms for individual companies. And when you do that, pay close attention to the fact that this isn't a software package you download and you throw it on a VM and you throw some telemetry at it and then magical things happen. Anyone trying to tell you that solution is making things up as far as how that works. A solution that can munge all the data generated by your specific tech stack, including your multi-vendor network infrastructure, of course, needs to be created specifically for your environment. And that is what Selector does. Now, Selector's been on Heavy Networking before. Many of you have started working with them because of those discussions, and we are glad that Selector is back. Joining us today is John Capobianco and Varija Sriram. John is the head of developer relations at Selector, and Varija is a fellow at Selector, head of application and data engineering, and the observability wizard at Selector. And Varija, John, you've been on the show before. You're a mad scientist. We kind of know about you. But Varija, this is the first time you've been on Heavy Networking, and as the observability wizard, I expected a pointy hat or something. I don't see a hat. But we're gonna lean into the observability part, and you're gonna get the first question here. Now, I said Selector is not something you download to a VM, throw telemetry at it, and magic happens. So could you set this up for people? Explain what a Selector engagement is actually like, and why it needs to be that way.
Thanks, Ethan, for that question. As you rightfully said, Selector is not a tool or a platform. You just dump it into a VM, it gets telemetry and magically provides insights. Because we are building a network monitoring expert in your environment, which needs to understand every little bit of how the network architecture is laid out, how each of your tools are interacting with each other. It is not just SNMP or network telemetry from the routers or switches or firewalls. It's also understanding what your CMDB looks like, what your meta store, what your meta labels look like, and trying to interface if there are some DIY tools that certain magic happens internally. The platform needs to understand all the aspects while it is able to come up with some correlated insights. And really, the proof to the pudding in coming up with an actionable correlated event is in the meta tags. It's not in the operational metrics that a networking device is giving out. It's all how well you understand or the platform understands association, how well it understands these relationships between different entities. And that purely cannot be just got from an LLDP or a MAC address association. You need to understand a lot more about the customer environment and context. So it is absolutely not a platform just put into a VM and it magically does its job. The models are data centric. So we need to engage with the customer, understand all the aspects of it, and only then the real value add of the platform comes through.
So one thing you said there was meta tags. Is that something I get from Selector that you're developing based on all of the data you're collecting about my network?
So it's a two-part to it, Drew. One is, yes, Selector by itself is discovering a lot of associations and meta tags as it's ingesting data, which it can directly derive from the data that it's ingesting. It could be either it's part of the netbox inventory or it's part of your interface aliases or LLDP information. But then there are a lot of other associations with respect to what is the region, the city, the state, the location, and which building this device really resides in, right? A lot of those tags are also as important as what the network entity itself comes up with the tags. So it's not necessarily that network monitoring telemetry can directly give you, but there are these other associations which you need to work with the customer and the networking architectural team to get this data.
So it's providing some context if I want to do natural language questions like what's going on in Dallas. It needs to know what I mean by Dallas.
Absolutely. That's a great way to sort of see how the insight comes through. In fact, this takes me to one example that we did for a customer where there was the Hurricane Beryl that hit last year. And the fact that we knew that there is this location within Texas, and we have the association of all the cities within the state of Texas, and we identified all the devices, we were exactly able to tell what is the impact of the hurricane. And we were able to come up with a complete insight on a natural language way to say how many of my devices are impacted, or what is the total hazardous condition that has been created because of the Hurricane Beryl. So it's very important to understand these tags, which really give what is a human insight that a human can consume in times of crisis.
Another keyword you said there was model. That is when I'm working with Selector, I am building a model that is unique to my environment. And I'm thinking this is an AI model of some sort. Is this like an LLM model, that kind of a model? What do you mean by model?
So, Ethan, at Selector, the Selector platform itself is an ensemble of multiple models. It's not just a single model. So when I say model, it's different types of data, and different phases of our ETL pipeline uses different models. For example, we have the LLM model for the natural language interaction. And we have the regression models to identify anomalies and baseline the data. And then we have clustering models to identify patterns and logs. And then there's temporal proximity analysis to identify correlation. So there's multiple models laid out in the entire pipeline. But I think the key thing to understand is these models are data centric. That is, they are centered around the context and the data of a given customer. The model itself doesn't change. The model is constant in the platform, but it evolves and it naturally, instantaneously learns from the ingestion of the data. So it all revolves around the customer's data and the context.
Yeah, and if I could just add, we like to call it a network language model for simplicity to represent the collection of all the individual models we're using. But the idea is, the consumerization of our AI is sort of happening, right? People want to be able to chat in natural language to almost anything. And that is where a lot of our demand comes from. I notice we haven't talked about any special query language or SQL or any special certification in the Selector platform that you need. It really is, from a consumption point of view, using your natural language and a natural language phrases dictionary that you start to build up over time to represent queries in a visual dashboard, as well as a summarization. So customers really feel the generative AI portion, the models that we use for summarization and taking visual data and explaining it to the user. So that's probably the most customer-facing impact, is our use of generative AI to summarize quite often complex dashboards and visuals.
Another piece of this then would be the stages of getting me from selectors coming in, and I need to have it learn about my environment, ingest a lot of data, deal with metadata, build that model. What are the stages of that like? How far is it from day 0 to day 1 where I'm doing something with what the model has ingested?
the way we engage with our customers before even bringing in the data into the system is we do a lot of workshops with the network architectural teams, and we also engage with the ops teams to understand, even before we start ingesting data, to understand how the network is built, what are the different aspects to it, how do we need to look at the data. So there's a lot of pre-work, I would say pre-day zero work, with workshops trying to bring it, because the platform, once the data comes in, if the associations are built correctly, it will all in a single day or couple of days you can actually get everything stood up. But even, yeah, sorry.
Well, this is bespoke then. You just said something really key there. That is, this is not, I'm calling support for a little help on where to aim some data feeds at the model. This is Selector is working with my company to help determine exactly what my network looks like. I'm talking to people before I'm talking to the AI, in other words.
Yes, yes, Ethan, right? And it's so key because AI is not something magical that will come out with just data by itself, right? Because then, which means that your AI is not really talking to what a ops engineer wants to see or get out of the system. If it is going to give you something that is completely out of just the data. So we really spend time working, and so the workshops are really key in identifying what are the key areas, what are the key pain points that the current ops teams are actually facing, and it could be getting insights at scale, and more likely than not, smaller problems like I'm seeing a BGP protocol session state flap, and I'm seeing all these interfaces flap. Just to get that single correlation itself is a big win at a scale at enterprise customer. So it need not be some magic that's happening in the backend. It is just being able to identify these patterns, identify the association of these patterns, and just bringing it together. And as simple as a interface flapped and these BGP sessions also flapped, I just need to bring it in together and say this is the root cause. The interface flapping, or this critical interface that is a provider facing interface is flapped, and now all these access points have gone offline, or the users are experiencing some issues at that site, right? It could be as simple as that, but to be able to identify those pain points and to be able to get it operational through the platform is what we really spend time doing in these workshops. And once these scenarios and the network architecture is understood, then it's just a matter of keying in the right data sources and identifying that the correlations and the patterns and the models that are in place is really exposing or bubbling up these issues in the right way, right, to the ops teams.
So does this mean the engagement goes like you've got the sort of pre-engagement, pre-day zero, where you're talking about the network architecture, talking about problems, talking about what kinds of visibility they want to get. Then I assume there's some kind of, we bring in the software, we start shooting data at it. And then is there also like we're going to, sort of live with you while you run it for a few days or a few weeks? Like how long does the typical engagement last before you kind of let the customer just have it and be themselves, like after all you guys go home?
So, in all honesty, we start engagement with the customer before we build the solution as a pre-workshop.
Mhm.
We ingest the data and we live with the customer. We become part of the network architectural team with the customer, right? We are never at a state where we say, okay, here's your platform, and you can go with it. A Selector data science team is always available for the customer, and we are constantly also monitoring the insights and understanding if our models are able to learn better and provide better insights, right? Yes, you're able to now identify a port flap for the BGP session, but can we go ahead and root cause it to why the port flapped? Was there a fiber cut? Right? Are we able to ingest more data? Are we able to go into the optical layer? Are we able to also now correlate it with an application that is getting impacted because of this issue, right? So we want to extend it to other use cases and sort of provide more value from the platform. So it's never implemented and done. So we are part of the customer's team trying to enhance and explore more insights from the platform.
Okay, so you're almost embedding with the team.
Yes, true.
Interesting.
Guys, I want to spend the rest of our discussion, or most of the rest of our discussion, talking through an example. That is, let's walk through some kind of a customer example or a story that you can tell about how a system got built and got us to this point of deep root cause analysis that was a specially built model for a specific customer's environment where you were able to, at the end of the day, tell, I don't know, I'm going to make some things up here, tell the difference between a network transport sort of a problem and maybe something a lot higher up the stack, like something going on in, I don't know, a Kubernetes cluster or the cloud or something like that. But you're able to distinguish, get to that MTTR, MTTI quickly because the model understands the customer's environment deeply. Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you did mention Kubernetes as one of the monitoring insights. For the Kubernetes cluster monitoring, Ethan, I can give an example of our own Selector platform that we have built out for Selector. So we have a Selector monitoring platform that monitors our instances, our customer instances. So that does the Kubernetes based monitoring for our own Selector platforms. So we ingest insights that this platform is giving us, right? So here we are constantly trying to learn or monitor our clusters and get to a faster resolution if one of our customers' platform is experiencing an issue. So that happened a few weeks back on a Sunday where we saw that one of the Kubernetes pods, one of the database pods sitting on our customer environment did send out a P1 ticket because the memory resource utilization was going across the threshold. And we received the ticket, and within, of course, it's a incident that got created within the Selector's platform. And within a few minutes, we were able to do an auto remediation where, again, Selector uses infra as code. So we were able to go back and edit the Kubernetes deploy specs to increase the pod resource limits on this particular cluster. And it restarts within the pod, so there is no shutdown of the platform. It's all getting auto restarted. They're all replica sets. And then within no time, the pod resource utilization, at least the limit increased, and the system was back green operational, right? So here is an example of MTTR in terms of infrastructure monitoring, where in a traditional scenario or a traditional setup, we would have received an alert, but then somebody would have had to then log into the system, understand what has happened, look at all the specs, go and make these changes and restart the system and whatnot, right? So the round trip time or the MTTR of getting the first of all, detecting the issue, detecting the issue, sending a actionable alert to our internal team, and which auto remediated by itself. So that's an example of infrastructure monitoring, which is also supported by the Selector platform.
I want to push on that a little bit. You said in this example, it was a memory resource allocation issue,
Yes.
which may show up to a traditional network monitoring system as, the database is just being slow to respond, and go try to figure that out. But you were actually able to see it's not a network issue, there's a memory problem. And not only could you see it was a memory problem, but you could also update the YAML manifest to give it more memory.
That's right. That's right, Drew.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So
that's something that a traditional network monitoring platform might see sort of, as ancillary to, what the actual root problem was.
Absolutely, Drew, because I think that's where the power comes through, that yes, it is monitoring the network, but it's also monitoring your infrastructure layer, and it's also able to monitor your application layer. So it knows exactly which applications sit on what hosts or VMs, and then what part of the networking that it is connected to. So it definitely, the mean time to innocence of network is immediately identified, and because you are able to identify that there's a violation on the VM that the application is sitting. So yes, if your database is slow to respond and you know that it is sitting on a given VM, and you know that is having a memory spike or a violation, you exactly know where to go and identify the problem.
And it's tied back to Ethan's earlier point of, it's great to say it's not the network. I mean, that's a good piece of information to have. But wouldn't it be better to be able to say it's not only is it not the network, it's memory on this node and this host and this cluster and this rack and this city in less time. I mean, if we're waiting for, I don't know, call it an hour, 90 minutes for the network to give you the all clear that it's not the network, that could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't think we can play this wait and see game any longer, given the complexity and the business reliance on our infrastructure to be up and healthy and running and operational. This is huge impact on OpEx and CapEx impact, right?
John, there was another story you were telling us regarding, I think it was, you said 98% ticket reduction or something, basically. Can you set that story up for us? Because I think that gives us a way to walk through kind of from beginning to end how that system got built.
Yeah, so that's a very large infrastructure organization, one of the largest out there, and they were facing like quite literally thousands of tickets about their infrastructure a day.
Tickets like what? Like network slow or circuits down or those kind of things, or
any and everything you could think of, just tickets at that scale, right? It's a problem of scale at that massive scale. The tickets are very varied. From it's slow to is my service up and running? Is it alive? But they're experiencing almost a $3 million savings, like a return on investment. And if we focus just on the ticket reduction alone, that has a lot of tertiary impacts, right? Your staff is freed up to work on more valuable things. They're not just fighting fires. Morale goes up. There's a lot of intangibles there other than just, we reduced their tickets from 98%, which is astonishing in its own. But to think of that scale, to have your operational team deal with 12 tickets a week instead of 3,000 tickets a week, which is the numbers that we've seen. They're down to the dozens of tickets now. Varija, do you have any maybe more insight on this ticket reduction use case?
Yeah, John. And I'll give a few other examples, right? Yes, I mean, this customer that you were talking about, yes, there's been a huge reduction in the tickets just because of the association of how these events happen and how we're able to correlate them together. But another example is, again, another enterprise customer where one of their locations in APAC was experiencing Wi-Fi issues, right? Customers were experiencing Wi-Fi issues. And it so happened that the WLC controller at that site connected to the WAN router was experiencing a northbound provider facing issue. There was a spike in the data, there was a spike in the utilization on that particular critical link. And we saw the whole set of access points, about 150 to 200 access points hanging off that WLC was experiencing issues with, channel utilization, and the KPIs and that access points were violating. So in a traditional monitoring system, we would have they were seeing when such issues happened, they were seeing about 200 odd tickets coming out from all these access points. The WLC is also sending out some tickets, and the WAN router that's connected to the provider interface is also sending out tickets. But the fact that we know that they're all interconnected and they're all happening around the same time, when we see the interface utilization spike up and we're seeing violations in that critical link, and we know that that's connected to the WLC, and we know all the access points are hanging off that. So we were able to create a single ticket, and that's where you see 200 or 300 tickets to one kind of a reduction. And that one ticket has a summarized output of, here is your root cause, and your impacted different other issues happening at the site are, XYZ. These are all your access points that have got impacted. This is your WLC that's also experiencing violation. And when the ops person gets that ticket, the network ops team gets the ticket, they exactly know that they need to go and chase that critical interface or critical provider facing interface rather than having to go and look at all these other tickets. Because in a traditional system, if you start getting the access point tickets first, the critical interface violation is buried down all the 200 odd tickets. So when your ops engineer is actually looking through all these tickets, they might not even get to that ticket on time. That is
Oh yeah,
where
I used to have the Outlook rule that forwarded all syslogs into a certain folder, and it would have
Yes, I had.
eight
Yes.
18,000 unread, and you got to go in there and start sifting through it, right? It's a great story. It is a great story, and anyone who's ever dealt with wireless problems, right? Wireless is fine, right? Like we all know that it's the upstream provider, but we're not looking at switches, PoE, QoS, diff serve. We're not looking at the WLC. They just know the problem is with the upstream provider based on the artificial intelligence outcome that Selector has driven. It is, I know it sounds too good to be true, but that is what we're bringing to market, Ethan.
Okay, so I want to go from the kind of results that you can get, okay, and I want to start walking through how. That is, let's help the engineers that are on the call go. Let's go from yes, awesome to okay, how does this actually work? And so I got some specific questions I want to drill into. So we're getting into the nuts and bolts here. We're getting into how we're actually going to do some of this, starting with this question. How do I get data into the model? So tell me things like, where does the model live? Is it in the cloud? Is it on premises? How does it get tuned? Is it something Selector's doing? Is it something I need to be doing? And what's the typical time from the start of the engagement, like you guys were mentioning the early questions and those early conversations of discovery and so on? How long from there to a working model? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 6 months? And how long does it take? So again, let's start. Where does the model live first and foremost?
So the model lives in the platform, Ethan, for, again, I said it's an ensemble of models. So there are multiple.
Right, it is. But so is that in the cloud or is that in my data center?
It is in the data center. It lives with the platform. So we support multiple types of deployments, on-prem, cloud, Selector cloud, or the customer cloud. So it lives with the platform based on where the platform is built.
Okay, so it's in my infrastructure if I want it to be. It's in the cloud if I want it to be. It all depends. So you're saying it lives with the platform, and the platform can be whatever my deployment model is. All right.
That's right.
Now I'm aiming all this data at the model. How does it get tuned? How does that happen? Is that a data scientist at Selector is doing that for me? How does that happen?
So the models themselves are constant, Ethan, and we spoke about a few example models, and we can talk more about it. So we have the clustering models, the regression models, the pattern detection models, or the LLM models. So the model is constant, but the training is happening instantaneously as your data is being ingested. So it could either be for your LLM interaction, for example, the data for which the customer wants some more additional insights, like tell me about all my devices in Texas, right? So that data instantaneously gets sent to the LLM model and you get the response. So it's not that they are pre-trained, because the current models are so powerful that it just takes the instant data and can get you results.
There's real-time data that needs to go into the model in order for my questions and the answers I get to my questions to be relevant. So you're making the point here. It's not just I'm training the model and here you have a model now. It's we're training a model, we're getting it set so it can answer the kind of questions that are going to be interesting for your environment, but also you're going to continue to be feeding events and other sorts of telemetry into that model so that when you ask it a question, the answer you're getting is relevant to now, to real time, not yesterday.
Correct. The answers are relevant to now because the current set of context is sent to the model when they need to be answered. And this is for the LLM models, right? And another point for the LLM models, as we were discussing, it is so contextual to that customer because there are some of our natural language training phrases that we build with the platform. And this is something that we want to make sure they go with the context and the lingo of what the customer calls certain things in the network. So if they refer to some things as clusters versus pods or regions or cities, so we want to make sure that it aligns with what the customer is referring to when they call a certain entity, right? So there's some level of natural language training that we do provide to our LLM model. So the model is constant, but there's the natural language training that happens. But for other models, for example, the auto baselining or the regression models, that is learned as the data is coming in. They are getting trained and they do a look back of certain amount of data, but it is as and when the data comes in, it gets, yeah.
Am I going to have to
And
structure that data in a specific way so that they can be ingested correctly?
Yes, Ethan. So the data extraction and the ETL pipeline is an important phase in the whole data engineering aspect.
Okay.
Because we do spend enough time, as I said, in the workshop, understanding the kind of data, and then we go back and try to architect how to extract or what do we extract or how do we format the data and how do we store it so that the models can start using the data or the models can start providing the right insights. So definitely we do want to format the data.
so am I just pointing like streaming telemetry at this? Am I exporting logs into it? How does it, and is it hitting, some sort of gateway first where there's some kind of transformation happening? What's that process look like?
Yes, true. So we ingest all types of data. When I say all types, so we ingest metrics, operational metrics, logs, events, traps, and it could be streaming telemetry. It could be an API-based polling. It could be a webhooks-based way of ingesting. And we also do the SNMP polling, synthetic ping mesh sort of data. So we ingest all types of data and we are able to collect. So we have a collection layer where all the data gets collected in its raw format. And then we put it through our second layer in the stack, which is called the data hypervisor. So this layer is really where we inspect the data. So we extract what we need to. So we load the data, we extract what we need to, and we export it to a database. So the
Okay.
data hypervisor is where all the magic is happening, where we are ingesting the data. We are enhancing the data with all the required meta tags. And this is really the layer where all the data gets normalized because SNMP metric will just tell you its network entities. It will just tell you what device, what IP address, that's about it, right? It's not going to tell us what region, what cluster, what building, what it is connected to, what association. But then your application metric that's coming in from another tool could carry some other information and will not tell you some of the network aspects. So we want to normalize the tags across all the different data sources. That way, when it eventually comes into this correlation window, the temporal proximity, and we look at, okay, in the 5 minutes or 10 minutes, tell me all the things that have gone bad. With the association of these labels, we are able to identify that they're all related to each other. And this is the blast radius. If an event has happened in the network, what is the blast radius of that event is really coming in from the meta tags. So we spend time to make sure that we are enhancing the labels, normalizing the labels, and extracting what is really important. And then that data gets exported out into our databases.
And is this happening with some automation, but also some human intervention, like data scientists and folks from my networking team? Is that where sort of this engagement lives?
That's right, Drew. So we have a team that's a combination of our network experts, data engineering, ETL engineers, and the data scientists. So when we ingest data, there's a lot of then exploring, understanding what are the right insights. And that is where I mentioned that when we are building this platform with the customer, it's not data is ingested and here are the insights and you can go with it. We work with the customer to make sure that the insights are right. Our data scientists get involved and we explore more to understand that, yes, this is really what is actionable and it is being provided in the right way. The right tickets are being, created out of this. And if there are ways that we can enhance, and if there are additional labels, and we work with the customers also to clean their own data, to clean their own labels. Sometimes the meta stores, the meta tags are not clearly defined. So we work with customers to identify the gaps in, let's say, the interface alias names, or identifying the right descriptions that can be given, identifying some of these gaps that are in the association where we can improve the insights. So we work with customers there, and that is where the engagement evolves as the project progresses.
Got it.
So does that process of figuring out all of the different associations that you can make and what data should be ingested and so on, cleaning up the data, I'm thinking of that as that's like part of the training process, part of the QA process too. So as I'm going through that, what's the timeline typically to go from this training, data ingestion, and so on to production? We're in production now, or is that a false distinction in this case?
So it's truly speaking, Ethan, when the data hits the system and with all the initial sort of exploration with respect to whatever meta tags that the customer has already defined, it is a few hours or a few days until when we can fully get up and running, right? But
Okay.
are these insights fully actionable? Are they providing the right value? Can we improve that? That is a process that we continue to work with the customer. So for different customers, the time is really variable. It can take a few days to a few weeks until when we are able to clean things up and provide the right value to the ops teams.
So we're going to get something out of the gate pretty quickly, it sounds like. Let's call it a week. And then we're going to iterate and tweak and tune and over a period of a few more weeks or maybe some months even, get to a point where it's like the system increases in usage, increases in value, and how interesting it is for me, how actionable what I'm getting out of it is going to improve over time.
And with more sources of data, the customer will say, oh, I see what's going on. Hey, could we include our radius data? Could we include our TACAX data? Could we get into maybe bare metal syslogs to help us tie back to application layer? Like, the more this iteration happens, the more data the customer wants to bring us, the better the outcomes, right?
So you can start to throw in APM data, application performance monitoring.
Yes, Drew. Yeah. As I said, any type of data, it's not limited to networking, infrastructure, networking, application. As long as there is a way to ingest the data and it is providing additional value in terms of insights, it has an association, we're able to provide a correlated view, we ingest it.
So how far up the stack can I go if I've got like, as an example, like App Dynamics or New Relic? Can I start, sharing that with the Selector platform to get even deeper application insight?
Yes, Drew. And we do have a few customers who have started to do that.
Wow. Okay.
So you can tell me if my AWS instance is slow, as long as you're collecting all the telemetry. You could tell me if it's my direct connect connection, if it's a VPN tunnel problem, or if it's way up in the AWS cloud itself. As long as you've got the telemetry, it's possible for all those correlations to... There's no such thing as like too much data to be throwing at the models, I guess.
That's right. I mean, we are able to identify if your connection to the AWS cloud is slow or there is a latency. So it is a two-part thing, Ethan. So one is, of course, we ingest, let's say, CloudWatch logs, or we are able to ingest certain telemetry that's coming out from the AWS cloud itself to say that, okay, these are some of the violations that we are seeing. But in addition to that, Selector has a homegrown synthetic ping mesh agent that we can spray it in different parts of the network, right? So we don't have to actually use the KPIs and the data from the tools. We are able to just ping our agents to say, what is the connectivity? Are we experiencing latency, right? And so these
Get your own
agents,
telemetry then.
yeah, our own telemetry,
Yeah.
right? So we
Yeah.
can install it on as small as a Raspberry Pi, right? We can install it on that or a networking device or a VM. So typically what we do is then we spray some of these agents in different clouds. If the customer wants to understand latency from their on-prem data center to the clouds, and then be able to say that, yes, you are experiencing latency, and hence these applications can get impacted. So that participates in the correlation with the rest of the other data that we're also collecting.
Wow.
I have 2 Raspberry Pis right over there. One of them's even
Mm.
working. I got one I pulled out of a box that's not doing much of anything right now. I got to figure out what's wrong with it. I think it's got a static IP. Say this to my shame. Okay, so I've got my selector model. It's ingesting tons of data. It's telling me things. Well, how am I interacting with what selector is telling me? Am I going into the selector web interface and it tells me stuff, or is it pushing data into some of my existing tools, or is it both?
Both, Ethan, right? And great question again. So we have made collaboration very, very seamless and smooth to our end users, because at the end of the day, we realize that no matter how much of insights and ML we build, if it's not easy for the end users to adopt it, then it's not going to be of use. At the end of the day, we need our L1, L2 ops teams to use it. So yes, the users can come into Selector portal and fire away natural language questions, trying to get answers to how's my network, what is my sort of a broad exec view of what's going on in the network, all the way to the smallest minute detail of this device and this IP address and what is the issue that I'm seeing, right? You just give a global search, just throw in a IP address and you will get everything about the device in a LLM summarized way, right? In a very human readable format of, yes, uh, these are all the things that are going on with your device, or your device is good. That is one way, Ethan and Drew. But then there is also integrations with Slack, Microsoft Teams, WebEx chat client, where one can interact with natural language questions, right? But this is the query way of asking the system what is going on. But then there is a secondary way of consuming the data, where the system is either sending out an incident or an alert that it sees, or just a periodic report of, here is what your site looks like or the network looks like, right? So there are multiple ways of how the data can be consumed. And definitely incident creation, ServiceNow or Jira ticket creations are one of the most actionable, where the system is able to identify these correlations and create these P1, P2 tickets for the ops teams.
And we're also experiencing some new success with closing the loop with let's just say iTential as a partner, or an Ansible tower, or an Ansible solution, or a Python solution. So our customers are getting very comfortable with the idea of Selector has identified the root cause of a problem. Now it's a risk exercise. Is it low enough risk that we could remediate automatically and simply provide a summary report in the form of a ticket that the engineer gets the following day? We don't need humans in the loop anymore for some use cases. And the other thing I want to mention, it's been almost an hour and I haven't said MCP yet. So
He's starting to twitch.
I know. I'm starting to get a little jittery here, but MCP has become one of the more popular ways our customers and new engagements. It's one of the first things on their checklist is Selector have an MCP. And this is sort of twofold. One is it allows our customers to integrate Selector with their third-party tool of choice, like Cloud Desktop or VS Code or whatever. And also, it enables them to build their own React agents, their own digital coworkers. We have customers who use the Selector MCP, which exposes our platform capability right inside of an agent they've written. So in terms of the consumption model, we've gone from just, like most platforms, we've got a REST API, we have Jupyter notebooks, we have different webhooks, to now we have this differentiator in MCP.
So that means if my organization is already invested in some kind of OpenAI or Claude or Anthropic chatbot, I can use that as my query front end to Selector, essentially, my natural language query front end.
Yes.
Exactly. You plug in Selector's MCP like a USB key into that, let's call it Claude Desktop. And now you don't need to launch the Selector portal or GUI or Slack or anything. You can interface with it directly from that, let's call it AI agent client. Yeah.
Okay. And John, earlier you said, with Selector, you don't have to learn like a specialized query language or anything, but I'm curious, how casual can I be in my natural language? Can I be really imprecise and it still sort of intuits what I'm talking about? Or do I need to sort of understand if I use this particular phrase or these sets of words, I'll get maybe a more informed result?
Right. So I like to think of it as a 3-step process. Either Selector's data scientists or we will work with you to come up with a visual representation of some piece of data. Then we associate that visual with a natural language phrase. Let's just say an inventory, right? Device inventory, where device type equals Cisco. That's a query, but I don't want to type all that. I just want to say, show me my Cisco devices. We have a semantic search. So you don't have to verbatim, literally with the case character match your query. As long as it's in the rough ballpark of the natural language phrase you set up, the RAG, retrieval augmented semantic query, will say, Ethan asked for a list of his Cisco devices. I have a query in here that says list of Cisco devices. I think that's the query Ethan or Drew want to run.
Okay. What if I said like, how many Cisco boxes are on, this part of the network? Can it?
Yeah, it will.
that?
It should interpret that. You could even ask it in Spanish or Japanese or a different language, as long as it's semantically close enough. And I guess maybe as a caveat here, and there's not other competing. If you had 30 phrases and another phrase actually uses the word box in it, do you know what I mean? So it's about semantic similarity. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
So I've been running my Selector model, but my IT stack has changed over the course of the last year, let's say. I want to retire some old data sources. Maybe I got to add some new data sources. How painful is that?
Absolutely easy to do, Ethan, and that this happens a lot with our Selector engagements where, as John was saying, right, there's just a lot of other tools that customers feel that they can add to the system and to improve value. So it's not necessarily retiring a data source, but then adding new data sources. So even if they have to replace and retire, it is as simple as building a new ETL pipeline, and every data source is a different ETL pipeline built within the platform, which is its own process, and it's a separate worker all by itself, right? Because that worker is responsible to ingest data, clean the data, normalize the data, and push it back into a data store. So the platform need not be taken down to add a new data source. It just happens seamlessly. It's a new pipeline that gets embedded. So every other service and other ingestion continues to flow through. Nothing needs to be stopped, and a new worker gets added to the system. And since we also use the microservice architecture, it's very easy to also perhaps integrate with a new tool, a new collaboration tool if needed, right? So if, again, a new telemetry needs to come in, a new way of ingestion needs to come in, it all happens seamlessly. So it's not a catastrophic event for the platform, or it's not something that needs to be redesigned altogether.
Does the platform care about the number of events or the amount of telemetry I'm sending into it?
Not really from a technical standpoint, Ethan, in terms of the amount of telemetry, but then definitely we want to make sure for the resources allocated for that cluster that is being stood up for Selector, we don't want to take it down with enormous amount of data. So that is where we decouple the collectors from our platform. So that way, then the collectors are collecting the data and then sending it off to the platform. And if we see a sudden ingest or spike of data, then we rate limit it while it's going back into our platform so it doesn't hit the platform. So we definitely want to make sure that we are balancing the amount of data and the amount of resources that are being provisioned for the platform cluster itself. But the good thing about many of our deployments, Ethan, is we prefer to deploy it in the Selector's cloud, where the pods and nodes can automatically be added to the cluster. So that way, then the cluster itself need not go down, and it'll automatically just add new pods or new replicas into the existing service, and we continue to work through, right? Because we do realize that sometimes if there is something that, some critical event has happened, we will see a burst of logs. And we don't necessarily want that burst of logs to cause some sort of a memory or a disk issue and the platform itself to go down. So that way we have that elastic way of expanding and we are able to manage through.
I think one of our larger ISP customers, it's a terabyte per 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
1 terabyte per 24 hours.
So, and that leads me to this question, which is, am I being priced based on the amount of information that I'm sending in, or how is this licensed? Is more data going to cost me more money?
No, the more data, so the licensing, I mean, I probably will not be the right person talking through it, John. I'll give my bit and then you can continue. But the licensing of the cost is definitely not based on the amount of data that's coming in, because what we, definitely understand is the more the data that comes in, we are able to provide better insights to our customers. So we don't want to limit it by just the sheer amount of data, but it is more about the number of entities that we are monitoring, right? And that entity can give various types of data. It can give you node monitoring for that particular piece, the entity it's sitting on, right? If it's a VM or a XI host, or if it is a networking device, you could have logs, events, traps, SNMP, ICMP. There's just various ways of looking at a given entity. So it's more of how many entities are being monitored, but not really the data aspect of it. But John, if you want to add into that.
No, that's my understanding as well, Varija. It's not a traditional, let's say, Splunk consumption model or cloud egress model with depending on how much data is flowing. It's more of an entity-based fixed pricing model.
That makes sense.
So when I've got all of this information flowing into the platform, now I'm at that root cause analysis place that we promised from in the intro here to this show. Now I'm at this point where I can ask the platform, why is X down or slow or whatever? And I should get insights. I should get answers. Or do I even have to ask the question? Am I going to get alerts out of the system saying, hey, thus and so is performing slowly and here's why, if I've got some kind of thresholding set up?
Yes, Ethan. So again, yes, great point that you don't have to ask the system that. The system is automatically ingesting the data, baselining all the data, identifying all the anomalies across every single data source that it is ingesting. And the correlations are happening automatically, right? Every 5 minutes or 10 minutes based on what each customer prefers. It is happening automatically, and these insights are being sent out either through Slack, events, Teams, or even tickets. So these insights are also present on the Selector's platform. When one logs into the platform, you see that these are your 5 or 10 events that have happened in the last 6 hours. And you also get a trend analysis of which devices are trending bad and how were they trending yesterday, right? It's also like a forecasting or predictive analysis of when is my a critical interface going to hit a 95% utilization. So a lot of these other insights automatically are being generated by the system. The users need not go and specifically ask for some of these things, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, Ethan, is that we talked a lot about the different varying model types. One of the models and approaches is GNN, graph neural networks. And what that lets us do is give the customer a visual knowledge graph showing what we believe to be the root cause of the event and the correlated events all the way downstream. Now we have a sliding scale that shows more or less coupling if you want to see the coupling of these individual events and how they're correlated. Now, why this is important is because when I got my first alert from Selector, I said, there's no way it could figure that out. How could this artificial intelligence tell me this is the root cause and here's the 30 subsequent issues? Well, we prove our work. We let the engineers go to this neural network and maybe for a post-incident review, what happened, what triggered it? Can we remediate this? Can we prevent it from happening in the future? Sometimes even just to prove, okay, Selector, how did you come to this conclusion? Now, I'm not saying that our customers are constantly looking at these graphs. Very not frequently, but if there's a major incident and they want to see how Selector came up with the root cause, we will happily show our work.
Yeah, John. It's part of the context that travels with the correlated ticket that is created. So if the L1 ops gets a ticket with a human summarized version of what happened, and assume that the L1 engineer is not able to fix it and it goes to an L2 or an L3, there is a hyperlink of that ticket. When clicked, you get complete detail of here is the graph that put all these events together. Here are all the raw anomalies and violations that were identified as part of the correlation. So it's not just the natural language summarized version of the incident, but every single data point with the complete correlation graph for L2 or an L3 or a network architect to actually go and understand that this is how it happened. And often, sometimes there's also cases where they say, okay, these labels need to be enhanced, or maybe they need to be corrected, or maybe there is an issue with how this label has been identified, and that helps either the customer goes and fixes their meta tags, or then Selector goes and fine tune some of the correlations. But the context travels with the incident.
So we've talked a lot about Selector either alerting me to things or me being able to query it. But what about if I've built out some automation workflows? I've got an automation pipeline. Can you tie in there?
Yes, true. And this is one of our very exciting collaborations. We're also working with iTential, but we also are able to integrate with other workflow automations like Rundeck and Ansible, where we're able to identify that, yes, we have detected a violation, an anomaly. We have identified what is the root cause. And now we understand that there are some automation platforms that the customer may have, which they have some pipelines built in to be able to remediate that problem. So, for example, if we identify there's a port flap event and the ticket can automatically call the iTential workflow to say there's been a port flap detected, because of which there are some BGP sessions that flapped, and there's some downstream devices that are seeing an issue. So when that is handed off to iTential, then iTential can run its pipeline to say, yes, I've identified this issue. I see that the port is flapped. Let me go ahead and reset the port, right? That is one use case. Another use case is if there's been a config change that happened on an event, right? And the end user might not know if it was a compliant, if it's compliant, or if it is a change that was supposed to happen on the system. The user could just do a right click and say, is this change compliant, right? Is this something that was supposed to happen? And then an automation pipeline can go and check, like maybe a ServiceNow change request was set in for this request, or do some other checks on the device to say that is the config change compliant, and is the user supposed to have done it, and provide back status. So there's a lot of different variations of how these integrations can happen, and the workflows can really come into play. So the answer is yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you'll integrate with those platforms, and it's something that popped in my head as you were describing that. That means Selector should also be able to interpret that the remediation step was successful or not successful.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Ethan. I missed that part out because, it's a closed loop automation where then the integration, or for example, iTential in this case is then sends an response back to Selector that the port has been reset. And even Selector is monitoring that entity by itself, right? So we're able to identify that, yes, we're out in the clear, the issue has been remediated. and an entire summary of what happened and the remediation that was taken place by iTential, and now the current status is all put together. And maybe that is a segue into the dashboard summarization view that we are able to present back to the customer. So it's a closed loop automation that.
Segue into the dashboard summarization view. So I take it that is this a roadmap feature? Is this something coming up?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. So as we talked about, a query represents equals a visual dashboard of some kind, which is typically one element on an entire pane of glass. And then through natural language, what I say, how's the health of Wi-Fi in Dallas? It might give me that individual widget. Well, this week, I've seen a preview, and we're going to be announcing this. It will have already been announced by the time this airs, but we have an entire dashboard summarization button. So if you can imagine, I have a dashboard with 10 widgets, and each widget has its own little bit of complexity and its own bit of important information. Well, now in one push button, I have a full summarization of what my human eyes are looking at on the dashboard. It's completely reducing cognitive load. It will actually jump out and say, right, in widget 2, you're going to see a red alarm. That means BGP is down. You should probably investigate that, as an example, right? But to summarize entire panes of glass, as opposed to just individual widgets, is going to really empower our that whole MTTI, MTTR. If I could just jump into Selector and in a single push button, have it kind of bring me up to speed with a summary of the current state of affairs, right?
Yeah.
So this is okay. Here's what's hilarious about this. So this is awesome. First of all, it's a cool feature you guys are gonna be bringing out here. But what's hilarious about it is, as an engineer, I have built the most epic, awesome dashboards that tell me way too much information, and had them up on a big screen on the wall, and you stare at it, and after a while you realize I'm getting nothing of value out of that because I put so much on there. I have no idea what's going on, and so you built it for me.
Right.
And I think initially one of the biggest value add of Selector platform was single pane of glass, right? So we're able to bring in all our tools, all your data sources into a single pane of glass. But as you rightfully mentioned, there's this enormous amount of data, even in that single pane of glass, that at some point you're either colorblind and you're not able to really, sort of differentiate greens and the reds and the yellows, and it's all over the place. So I think this dashboard summarization, it could be at a site level, a region level, a city level, just name it, and you can get a full view in a very human readable, summarized version of what is going on, what are your important critical things that need to be focused on, and rather than going through a single widget and the colorization. Yep.
Well, and at a high level, right, at the real upper levels, it might just be a red-green tile. But if it's red and I click on that tile, that then leads me to another pane of glass that has even deeper widgets. And some of these are timescale. Some of these are not just red, green, obvious, happy, not happy things. So yes, at the higher levels of the Selector dashboard, I might be comfortable without this auto summarization. But the more I drill down and the deeper I get into the nuts and bolts of the error, that summarization button is really going to help me out.
So how about help us out with ROI? I mean, I can as an engineer, we all gonna want a tool that does a lot of what you guys are describing, but finding budget can be a challenge. Do you have a win or some creative ways we can think about ROI and help find budget for a tool like this?
Well, I think even just in that ticket reduction example, and that, one of our customers in particular, that is their big story, is their ticket reduction. But every one of our customers has experienced ticket reduction. That equals ROI. I mean, with the money they've saved just on ticket time and MTTR and MTTI, they could have bought 10 Selector platforms, right? So there's huge ROI. And the other thing is, we know that in this new era of AI ops, people are not necessarily looking to augment their staff with more humans, for good or for bad, or for better or for worse. They're looking to augment their staff with artificial intelligence capabilities. So it's hard to say, what does a new digital coworker in my team, how do we figure out the ROI on that? But it's actually autonomously fixing problems, taking actions, proactively reducing, outages. There's a lot to consider here on ROI. But like I said, even in the obvious upfront ticket reduction, mean time to innocence, mean time to repair, there are tangible benefits for having Selector in your stack.
Yeah, I just to chime in there with John's statement. I think our biggest champion with the Selector platform has been alert reduction, noise reduction, which results in lesser number of tickets, which results in reduced NTTR for sure, but lesser number of engineering hours or ops hours per ticket, which eventually, of course, results in a better ROI for the platform. And not just the big enterprise customers, even our smaller mid-tier customers who use the platform. The fact is that for some examples, we've seen the alert tickets go from 500 odd tickets in a single day to less than 20-25 actionable tickets which are correlated, and this is really for the optical monitoring and use cases where traditional tools, for example Netflix and these tools, pump in a lot of alerts events when there's a fiber cut that happens across their optical network, but we are able to identify the optical path, for example, and sort of correlate all these alerts and events that come in when a fiber cut happens and tie it back to the IP upstream router, right? So when all this comes in a single ticket, the reduction in tickets and the fact that the ops team is focused on that one root cause that they can go and fix, that automatically cuts down the amount of time that they're spending and the amount of spend for these ops teams, because sometimes these ops teams are a third party team that you bring in, and so the amount of money is charged by the ticket, by the ServiceNow ticket or by the Jira ticket that they need to work on. So it definitely translates to money there.
And this also goes back to what one of you guys said earlier in the show. There are businesses that operate on, if we are down X number of minutes, that costs us X dollars. Those metrics are known to the business. And I have actually worked for a couple of organizations where it was like that. When you have a solution to the problem more quickly, you save money and the tool pays for itself quickly. So, okay. A couple of closing questions here, guys. We get a bunch of very cynical network engineers about AI. John, you've run into this. I know you have, in your role where you've been trying to evangelize AI and the real world use cases and gotten a lot of pushback. For network engineers that are like, okay, AI is real, there's something here, how do I get educated? Do you have some resources you would recommend?
Well, I mean, not to self-promote, but I have put focused effort on, the Gemini CLI as a YouTube playlist, AI Agent as a YouTube playlist. I've really tried to do my best to make network automation related YouTube content, and as well as Selector's blogs. There was a recent article from MIT about how 95% of AI pilots fail. And it's actually become one of our most popular blogs. Dallin wrote a paper as to why Selector is not necessarily experiencing that, or we're having a different experience in that we are the 5% that the article is focusing on that is succeeding, right?
I wanted to highlight that because what you guys are doing with the model and how you build it custom, and it's not just a model, it's a series of models that work in a layered fashion and interrelate. That is what so many other models, they don't do that. It's a foundational model, and they're throwing things at it, and mixed results come out.
But to that cynical network engineer, the good news is the REST APIs, the Python, the JavaScript, the Ansible, all that stuff I've been telling you have to learn for 10 years, you can forget all about it. It's all natural language. In this last hour, if we brought up Python once, did we bring up coding once? No, we didn't. Because in Vibe Ops with Selector, it's all natural language based. So we're not putting that extra burden on a network engineer to say, oh, by the way, you better sign up for a night course in Python to support this new platform that you're getting. That era is over. The REST API had a good run from 2000 to 2024. 2025 and beyond, it's all natural language, it's all MCP, it's all models, and AI is here. So I think that same cynical network engineer should actually be excited. The command line is relevant again. Natural language is the way that we're going to operate things.
Yeah. And just to add into what John said, Ethan, again, yes to that, the cynical AI, the cynical network engineer about AI, right? I mean, when you go to the network, Selector blogs and the webinars and everything that we speak about, it is clear that AI is not some magic that's happening behind the scenes. It is really identifying the network. The models are data centric. The models are learning from the data. And it is really alert reduction in very simplistic network scenarios of protocol, flapping because of interface down or a critical device, or just being able to identify these core use cases and reducing the noise at scale is really what the AI that's happening, right? So it is not some magic that's happening in the network that comes up with these insights. It's really working with the data, working with the customer's network, and identifying the actual actionable correlated alerts. So it comes down to, yes, understanding how we're building these blocks, what are the building blocks in play, and that coming in with a natural language collaboration to it is really what Selector is bringing to the table.
Very good. Okay, John, Varija, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And if you're listening to this show and you're that cynical network engineer, well, I've said it before, but there's something here with Selector. Would you please investigate them if you are curious about AI? There is something very real with what's going on with these folks. Now, Selector.ai, right? So we got Selector.ai/blog, Selector.ai/webinars. We've got links to, John, your YouTube playlist. You mentioned your Gemini CLI playlist that's out on YouTube. All that's going to be in the show notes at packetpushers.net. Or in your podcatcher. If you scroll through, you should be able to find them there. And lots of great information. John, if people want to follow you on the internet, how do they do that?
Twitter X, I'm just John_Capobianco. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn and easy to find on YouTube. And I'm really, really happy and thankful that we had Varija join us today. I'm doing my best to get Varija out into the community and sharing her infinite wisdom, and she's just amazing. So thank you, Varija, for handling most of this call today.
Yeah.
And Varija, are you? Maybe you're not as social as John, because none of us are actually. But are you on LinkedIn? Can folks find you?
Yes. I'm on LinkedIn, Varija Sriram, and have a few Medium articles too, and you can find that through Varija Sriram. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, chase up these people, and thanks for listening to Heavy Networking today. Now, if you do ping Selector, would you please tell them that you heard about them on Packet Pushers? That helps us to do what we do here. This is not just a fun hobby that Drew and I do in our spare time. Packet Pushers is a full-time endeavor for several people, and it's how we feed our families. Please do all the things: like, share, and subscribe. Join our free Slack group via packetpushers.net/community. Send us your comments, questions, and feedback via packetpushers.net/follow-up, and you can catch Drew and I at a bunch of live events that one or both of us are going to be attending between now and the end of 2025, including AutoCon 4 and KubeCon. Last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.